Hi, I'm Whitney.
And I'm Taylor, and we're the Ghost Sisters.
Da, da, da.
Da, da, da. Okay, so what are we doing today?
Talking about time slips. Time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping.
So
I actually have so many time songs. So
yeah, I immediately thought, let's do the time warp again.
That was the other one. Yeah. Yeah, that was another one.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about time slips. I guess we're just going to go straight into it.
Sure.
All right. So I did do research. I actually was like on top of my game and like did it ahead of time.
Yeah.
Not that I don't do my research, but I was really like, oh, we're doing it. So, but I feel like some of the stuff that I got as far as like science and whatnot goes over my head, but I'm like, sure, makes sense. So we'll get into it.
Yeah, maybe I can help you with the science part of it.
Like theoretically, it makes sense to me. Like I understand what they're saying, but then like while I read it, I'm like mumbo jumbo. So, but I mean, in the end, I understand what we are talking about. So,
okay, cool stuff.
Alrighty. Time slips are a paranormal phenomenon in which a person seems to travel through time, either forward or backwards. The person experiencing the phenomenon doesn't know how the time slip occurred, or they don't have the ability to pick and choose, like, oh, I'm going to go here and I'm going to do this. It just happens.
Which is terrifying, if you ask me, because you know, you could, if you don't have control over when the time slip is going to let you back out, you may come out like, I come out at 36 years old when I really should be 92. Like, that's terrifying to me.
So I didn't find anything about like people being stuck for years and years at a time. I mean, I don't know if there's someone that time slipped for 5 years. Hit us up, man. Because what is your life? But
right?
Also, like, I never saw anything like that. It was just like more moments of like a day or a time, and they managed to slip back into the past.
Okay.
So going with that, Einstein's theory of relativity, gravity can be described as motion of objects following curved lines in space, or rather space-time. So the curved lines are caused by the presence of a mass, for example, the Earth or the Sun. And in other words, according to Einstein, mass causes space-time to curve.
Correct.
Okay. Objects moving near that mass will roll towards it, much like a ball would roll towards a heavy person sitting on a trampoline.
Okay.
So with that, as the Earth spins, it could cause a twist in the fabric of space-time.
Okay.
So in the diagram that I saw was like, you know, the Earth is sitting, and then underneath it is kind of like a weird down spiral of like, to describe it.
Okay.
So with that, NASA back in 2005 actually came up with Gravity Probe B, GPB. GPB.
You're just ahead whenever GPB.
GPB. So in order to test Einstein's theory. So this is all according to science.nasa.gov. So the way that the GPB works is it has 4 of the world's most perfect spheres that have ever been created by man. They're put together, and then this is put around the Earth's orbit. So then that way, whenever like the spheres are going, it's not, the axis of it isn't tilting one way or another, because it has to be perfect spheres within it for it to stay stable. So it's like a gyroscopic thing.
Okay.
But it's spinning around the Earth's orbit.
Right.
Right. So the gyroscopic axis should continue to point towards the one spot forever. But if space is twisted, the direction of the gyroscope's axis would start to shift and drift over time. Nothing should... So So I barely touched my mouse and my notes were like, and they completely scrolled. So
I thought for a second you were like, and I just time traveled.
wow, I learned I can't do this episode. Wow. Okay, no, back to it. So, anyways, if the gyroscopic axis does start to drift and there's a change in the direction relative to the point that it's pointed at, this is how space and time can be measured.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, great. Because you're making the same face that I think I was making whenever I was trying to read it. I was like, it makes sense, but my brain is also like, fuck, what?
So, no, I'm thinking more of a, because the Earth's axis tilts, and it moves between 22 and a half. No, I think it's 22 and a half degrees to 24 degrees, maximum tilt on its axis. And its axis actually wobbles as it moves through space. So I wonder what makes Earth different from these spheres, aside from the fact that Earth is not a perfect sphere. It actually bulges out at the equator. But I'm just interested in how those two compare to one another. It's just my brain doing the science.
I don't know. You went past my research.
I'm sorry.
So with that lovely question, Taylor.
Some PhD student out there can look into it.
Yeah. Hit us up if you're like a space-time person physicist. Is that what that is? I don't.
Yes, the physicists are the ones that look into space-time.
Heard that. Physicist, hit us up. All right, let's go. So in 2011, NASA actually received data back that confirmed that the Earth has a 4-dimensional space-time vortex. So it's confirmed, y'all. Confirmed by NASA themselves. So
Cool.
What that means is that instead of an object simply just revolving around the Earth, it is revolving around it while the Earth itself is spinning, causing the vortex around it to pull down and spin. So like I said, picture the ball. The ball is the Earth. Mm-hmm. I just came up with a random ball. Picture the Earth, and it's a ball, and underneath it is like a weird spinning tornado vortex of space and time. Okay. So the same that they give, the example is if someone is sitting in the middle of a trampoline, you put an object on it, it will not only go towards the person, but it will go down.
Right. Okay.
So, man, science. All right. So.
See, I'm over here like, fascinating.
So Francis Everett, he's the GPB principal investigator at Stanford University, said, quote, "Imagine the Earth as if it were immersed in honey. As the planet rotates, the honey around it would swirl, and it's the same with space and time. GPB confirmed 2 of the most profound predictions of Einstein's universe, having far-reaching implications across astrophysics research. Likewise, the decades of technology innovation behind the mission will have a lasting legacy on Earth and in space."
Cool.
I feel like the honey representation is really like, because you can picture like the honey swirling and moving as the Earth swirls in it.
Yes.
So all of that to be said, Einstein did have the theory of time is not linear.
Correct.
To this moment right now is happening multiple times. And the moment that we just talked about with all that science is also happening concurrently with this moment right here. So when will then be now? Soon.
I also thought Jeremy Bearimy, so.
Jeremy Bearimy, what?
From the Good Place? Did you ever watch?
Jeremy?
Okay, I was like, I thought you watched this.
The eye broke me. Okay. I remember. I'm with you now. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, still on the science. So, I hope you guys are like really hanging in there with me.
I sure am.
Okay. There's John William Dunne or Dunn, Dunne. I'm going to go with Dunne.
Dunne.
John William Dunne was a British soldier, aeronautical engineer, and a philosopher. He studied precognitive dreams. This does tie in. Okay, precognitive dreams in 1927 and went on to develop the theory of serial time that was eventually published in a book called An Experiment with Time. So Dunne proposed that our experience of time as linear is an illusion brought about by human consciousness. He argued the past, present, and future were continuous in a higher dimensional reality, and we only experience them sequentially because of our mental perception of them. So I know we were just joking, but just like I was saying, all that science mumbo jumbo that I just talked about, like if you guys hit rewind and go back, that's happening now. But it's also not happening now. It's happening in the future, but it's also happening right fucking now. But this moment where I'm freaking out about stuff happening right now is happening now. So in that theory, it's possible that all of a sudden you could have a time slip and end up back in time or in the future because all time is happening at the same time.
I'm not high enough for this.
It really it hits different. Okay. So
we gotta breathe. We gotta take a moment.
that really I don't do that much science in one sitting, but also at the same time, you're right. I really should be high for that because god damn.
That wasn't even that is there's science and then there's philosophical science, and that's on a whole other level. And philosophical science makes my brain want to melt. It's crazy.
Yeah. Because you're yeah, I'm with you. I get it. Space-time vortex. And then all of a sudden you're like, but everything's happening at the same time, but not at all. And it's just terrible. Yeah.
So really, you can't be mad at past Whitney because past Whitney is current Whitney, who's also future Whitney.
Yeah. And future, current, past Whitney are all dicks. So
that's legit.
None can be mad at the other because we're all dicks in the end. So it doesn't matter. So it's fine.
That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah. So next time I'm yelling at past Whitney for not putting gas in my car, I can just say, hey, current Whitney and future Whitney and past Whitney, you're an asshole.
That's fair. Future Taylor loves past Taylor because current Taylor typically is future Taylor would love me if I did this. So.
Oh, I'm future Whitney would really enjoy. Yeah, but current Whitney wants to take a nap. So yeah, definitely going to take a nap.
Yeah.
All right. So what did all that science mumbo jumbo have anything to do with our podcast is what everyone is asking.
Yes.
That leads us to our stories.
Nice.
Dun, dun, dun. All right. So there have been accounts. I'm going to say quote unquote accounts because obviously you and me, Taylor, you're a scientist of some different manner. I am not a scientist whatsoever. So I can't take any of the accounts and be like, hey, yeah, you got this. Yeah, you're correct, sir.
That's fair. I'm a geologist. All I know is rock on table, now or rock on floor.
Rock on, though.
Oh!
All right.
I take you for granite. Oh! Okay. Continue.
All right, this is a bunch of schist. Okay, let's go.
Nice one.
Okay. Nice. Okay. So we're going to move on to Liverpool, England. What up, y'all? So apparently Bold Street seems to be a hot spot for different people to have time slips.
Okay.
So I have a little bit of history of Bold Street. And only one part of it makes me think yeah, this could be a hot spot for some crazy activity, but also at the same time, not really. I haven't found anything that says for one instance or another, you would experience a time slip in a spot.
Right.
More so than you would somewhere else. So the history of Bold Street, it was named after a sugar trader, James Bold, in 1780. And it was laid out for residential use a little bit later. In 1802, Bold became the mayor of Liverpool, and Bold Street mainly housed dock workers since they needed housing to stay close to the docks.
Okay.
It was also called the rope walks. Back in the 18th century, soldiers would actually measure out their ropes for their boats with the street itself. It was the perfect length that they needed for their boats.
Huh.
So there's the Lyceum that's at the end of Bold Street that has an interesting past. It used to be a gentleman's club. It went to a library, and it was also a coffee shop for some abolitionists.
That is an interesting past. It was doing the nasty, and then it was doing the smart, and now it's come write your screenplay.
I didn't look too far into what the Lyceum is as of current or any of the rest of its past, but those were just some things that it noted that were also there. St. Luke's Church can be seen at the top of Bold Street and is named the quote unquote bombed out church because of how badly it was damaged in the Blitz of 1941. And it actually still stands today. It's a memorial to everyone that they've lost and everyone that stood bravely over the years, not just during that time.
Okay.
So that's just a little history of Bold Street. In July 1996, a policeman named Frank and his wife Carol were visiting Liverpool to do some shopping. They both went their separate ways. Carol went to a place called Dylan's Bookshop on Bold, and Frank went to Ranelagh Street to go to a record store. After about 20 minutes, Frank decided to head back to meet up with his wife at Dylan's on Bold. At that point, he noticed everything was oddly silent for a moment until all of a sudden a boxcar that was from the 1950s was honking at him and nearly missing him. Across the street, where the bookstore Dylan's was, is now a store called Cripps, Cripps, which had women's bags and clothing instead of books. He took a look around and noticed that the people on the street were wearing clothing that also looked like it was straight out of the 40s and the 50s. And at some point, while looking around and trying to figure out what happened, he saw a woman, possibly in her 20s, wearing clothes that looked like they were from the 90s. So from his time period. She walked straight by him and went to go into the clothing store. He followed her inside, and all of a sudden, the interior of that store changed back into the bookstore.
What? Okay, so there's a woman from the 90s here?
So yeah, so everyone that he saw was from like the 40s and 50s, but then he spotted a woman wearing clothes that looked like it was from the 90s, and she walked into this clothing store. So he actually followed her in. It changed instantly back into Dylan's, the bookstore. He went up to the woman and asked, like, did you see that? Like, what just happened? And she very nonchalantly thought, yeah, I thought it was a new shop that had like just opened. I was going to get some new clothes, but now it's a bookshop. And then chuckled and shook her head and walked out.
As one often does.
Super, super casual. So like,
Legit.
no big deal. So that's one instance of Bold Street having a little time slippage there.
I 100% would be out on the curb screaming. Like, that's freaky. That's, especially if the person that was there with me, like that was in that moment experiencing with me was just kind of casually like, it happens. Like,
not my first rodeo. Talk to me when you've been in the 20s. No biggie.
Okay.
So in 2006, a man named Sean was actually running from a security guard after stealing something. He was running down Hanover Street and then decided to shake him off by going down Brooks Alley. Once he turned down, he started having troubles breathing, and he was waiting for the guard to come get him around the corner, but he never did. He explained that the breathing it wasn't like he had asthma or anything. It was more like the environment and atmosphere. Something changed. And so he was having trouble breathing. So thinking he had escaped, he decided to go back out around the corner and start towards Bold Street. At that point, he started to notice that things were not how they were before. There were street signs that didn't used to be there, older models of cars, outfits of people that didn't match the time. Around then, he started to suspect he was no longer in 2006. He found a newspaper stand, and the newspaper read May 18th, 1967. He started panicking, remembered he still had his cell phone, and he tried to call. But of course, there was no signal because it's 1967. He continued to walk, and he found a jewelry store that he recognized, H. Samuel, the jeweler. He went inside trying his phone again, and it actually worked. But he looked out the window, and everything still looked wrong. Eventually, he left the store, hopped on a bus, headed home. He was like, fuck this shit, and left. So, of course, this guy that was a thief now got his 15 minutes of fame. His story was so crazy that the news interviewed him. He repeated the same story up to 4 times, and there was no change in his story whatsoever.
Huh.
Are you ready for the next part?
No, but okay.
The security guard was also interviewed, and he stated that he did indeed chase Sean down Hanover Street and turn down Brooks Alley where he had seen him go, and he completely vanished from sight.
Oh my God.
So Sean straight up yeeted out of 2006 into 1967 and popped back out somewhere else.
There's nothing okay about that because, like, you have no control of when you come back out of it. So he literally could have just popped into 1967 and just stayed there.
Yeah.
Like, that's horrifying to me.
Yeah.
Glitch in the Matrix kind of stuff. Ooh,
yeah.
We should do a whole thing on Glitch in the Matrix. Holy shit. Okay.
Get on it, man. What you waiting on?
I'm just going to sit here and make that noise for the rest of the...
Okay, I'm sure everyone greatly appreciates that.
Toads.
Okay. So my next story is actually in, oh my God, what's that place called? Don't put this in, Taylor. What, my brain just broke. Louisiana. All right.
Please. I thought it was going to be some obscure, like, Sri Lanka or something. Louisiana.
My brain just was like, nope, fuck you. Because I kept wanting to say New Orleans, and I was like, it's not, but it's where New Orleans is. It's in Louisiana. Okay, so this took place in Louisiana.
Okay.
All right, so this actually came from a magazine called Strange Magazine #2 in 1988.
Okay.
The guy that wrote the story actually knows the man that went through this.
Okay.
So this is a secondhand account, I guess.
Okay.
All right, so on October 20th, 1969, a man who in the story is called LC, but since that's all he gives, I'm going to call him Lee. Was with his business associate who we're going to call Charlie because that's what the article did. So his name's Charlie. Lee and Charlie were in Abbeville in Southwest Louisiana after getting some lunch. From there, they began to drive from Abbeville to Lafayette, which is only about a 15-mile drive. So they were driving along. There's no traffic in either direction. They're on Highway 167, which apparently doesn't have, any side roads. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
So they're driving along and they notice they come up to this old timey car that's like really just slugging by. Like it's super slow. And they look and it looks like a brand new car from the 1940s. And it's in perfect condition. And it actually has 1940 as the year on the license plate. And that's what struck Lee as like, hey, you can't. That's probably not legal. There's no way unless this is some kind of like, festival car or parade car or something like that.
Right.
But so they pull up to the car because it's going like super duper slow. They pull up to the car and notice that there's a young woman and a small child in the car. And they're wearing outfits that look straight from the 1940s with like heavy coats. And Lee and his buddy, they have the windows down in their car because it's like 60 degrees. So they're like, why do you need those heavy coats? What's going on? The woman started looking around pretty frantically. And at that point, Lee, who was in the passenger seat, kind of motioned and asked like, hey, do you need help? And she nodded yes. And so he worked trying to get her to like, hey, I need you to pull over. Like, we'll pull over here and I'll help you out. Of course, her windows are up. His window is down. So she's having trouble hearing him. So finally, it looks like she's going to pull over. So Lee and Charlie pull over, see that the woman is slowing down even further to pull over behind them on the shoulder. Once they stopped to check to see where she was, she simply vanished. Again, the highway that they're on doesn't have any side streets or anything. There's no way for her to just turn down a different road or hide behind a bush or hide behind a sign. So they're sitting there kind of freaked out when all of a sudden another car pulls up behind them on the same road. We're going to call this guy Greg. So Greg gets out of the car, walks up to Lee and Charlie, and he's like, hey, dude, what the fuck? Like, what just happened? And he says that what he saw was he saw a newer car, the car that Lee and Charlie were driving, starting to pass an older car, the one that looked like it was from the 1940s. And it was going so slow, it almost looked like they were stopped. But then finally he noticed that they started to pull off. So the newer car pulls off to the side. He watches the older car pull off to the side as well, almost blocking completely the view of the newer car from him, and then just vanished, leaving just the newer car and Greg's car on the road. So the three men decide that they're going to do an extensive search looking for the car or the woman or any sign of either, and they never find anything. The men end up exchanging phone numbers, and apparently Greg would call Lee every so often and be like, hey, dude, that actually happened? And he's like, yeah, that did happen.
Okay, I 100% would need that as well. Like, you have to call and tell me, like, dude, that legit happened. Because I would think I was going crazy. Also, this poor woman, I would much rather jump back in the past than jump to the future, because the past, at least you can put a time frame to what you're looking at. The future, you have no idea. You know, she jumps into the future and all of a sudden there's this very crazy looking car next to her and this man that is dressed nothing like she would have ever expected. And he's talking to her. Like, I could see that being absolutely terrifying. And
so that's interesting that you took that point of view on it, because my thought was like, what if it's just a ghost car?
It could be a ghost car.
I was also thinking or under the impression that Lee and Charlie and Greg slipped into the 1940s. Whenever you're saying the car from the 1940s slipped into 1969.
Yeah.
Which would be a little terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both ways is terrifying, but I think slipping forward is more terrifying.
Or is it also super cool? Because then you watch it come to fruition afterwards.
I mean, it would be, but I don't know, because I mean, what if you come into a time period where all of a sudden, like, cats are ruling the world or something like that, and you have to wonder if that's coming up in your timeline, like your lifetime, you know, like something super crazy, like you jump forward in time and suddenly your entire city is destroyed, like, and then you jump back in time and you have to wonder, oh my God, is that coming for me? I guess it depends.
Yeah, I don't know. And then also, would you then try to stop it?
Oh, yeah, that's legit. Would you try to stop it from happening? But if you don't know when it's coming, I think that would drive you crazy. You'd spend your entire life doing something that you have no idea if this is actually going to make a difference or not, which is literally what we do every day. So,
or Taylor, what if you are already crazy and you are now experiencing past crazy, future crazy, and current crazy all at the same time?
Nope. Nope. Nope.
Just fucking no, bro.
I noped out of that. My brain was like, and I'm someplace else now.
And can't. All right, so my last story is actually a pretty long one, so bear with me, you guys, but this is probably like the more famous. If you look up anything that has to do with time slips, you're going to come across these two lovely ladies from Paris.
Buckle up, bitches.
Buckle up. Let's go. All right, so they actually ended up writing a book. So their real names aren't Mrs. Morrison and Mrs. Lamont, but at the time, they didn't want to associate their names with this craziness. Mm-hmm. But since everything is written as Mrs. Morrison and Miss Lamont, I'm going to refer to them as such.
Okie dokie.
So the book that they wrote is called An Adventure, which I did get on my Audible.
Ooh.
But I have some thoughts and feelings about the Audible. So if you guys are ever like, I'm just going to get that and download it. And sorry, dude, if you ever somehow manage to come across our podcast, it's not that I'm hating on you, but also like it sounds like you picked up this book and were like, I'm going to do an Audible. And you decided to make an Audible out of it. Because it does just kind of sound like this dude is recording in his kitchen and has like pages on like a music stand. Like there's a few times you hear them wrestle, or like he'll stop and be like, or he just will repeat the same line because he didn't like the way he took it, but then didn't edit it. So anyways, that's my little like...
It's like Audible amateur hour.
Yeah. So
okay.
Miss Morrison and Miss Lamont were visiting Versailles on August 10th, 1901. So the two women were in France to work for something that Miss Lamont was doing. I believe she was like building a school or something like that. And so Miss Morrison was there helping, and they decided to go do some sightseeing. So they wanted to find the Petit Trianon. You speak French?
I can't see the word, so I don't know. I know petit.
Petit.
Yeah, petit.
Trianon. Trianon?
Trianon.
So Petit Trianon, because I don't speak in the French. Okay. So they decided to go find the Petit Trianon in Versailles. The two women started their way towards the Petit Trianon, not fully sure exactly where they were going. Miss Morrison followed Miss Lamont because she seemed pretty confident that she knew where she was going and started to head down the path. But she was surprised that Miss Lamont didn't stop to ask the woman that was shaking a white cloth out of a nearby window for directions. So they continued down the path. They started talking about their work, about other things of interest, when they saw a building that had an open doorway with a carved staircase that ended towards that doorway. They didn't really see anyone around, so they didn't want to intrude or take a look, So they were like, we'll just keep walking, we'll find this place. So as they continue down their path, they see two men who they believe look like gardeners, the way that they're dressed. One of them maybe has a spade, and there's like a wheelbarrow kind of near him. Miss Lamont asks, which way do we need to go to get to the Petit Trianon? And they say, oh, it's, that way. Like, eh. And she asks a couple times, and they keep repeating it in the same fashion. So they're like, all right, let's go. So they keep going down the path. Miss Lamont kind of looks around, and she notices that there's a house, and there's a woman outside, and there's a girl that's standing in the doorway. The woman's handing the jug to this girl. She's maybe like 13 or 14. They just keep going about their lives and keep walking. Around this point, both of the women start to notice that they both are feeling really down and depressed, and just this overwhelming oppression that they just can't shake. But they don't want to really alarm the other one, so they never really say anything about it to each other. They just keep it to themselves and are like, it's just me. I'll get over it. They also kind of noticed that the scenery started to change. It started to look more like it was part of a painting instead of something tangible right in front of them. They were in the painting.
Okay.
So soon they start to come up to the small little kiosk that's on the pathway, and there's this man that's sitting close to it, and he's got this cloak and this hat, which Miss Morrison found kind of odd because it was kind of a warm day. I mean, it's, middle of August, but he's wearing this big cloak. So he looks at the women, and Miss Morrison instantly felt alarmed whenever he looked at her. Noticed that his expression she describes as repulsive. And Miss Lamont noticed that it looked like he had scars from the pox, but his face looks just with malice. They come up to this fork in the road, and they're both kind of asking, like, oh, which way should we go? Should we go to the right? Should we go to the left? Miss Morrison, even though she never said at any point, she just didn't feel like she could go to the left. That was not the path that she wanted to take whatsoever. Around that point, though, all of a sudden they hear someone start to run up on them. And they look around, and there's no one there. But then all of a sudden this guy shows up next to them near these rocks over on the left. And he says, Madame, Madame, like, no, you don't want to go this way. You don't go to the left. You want to go to the right. Go to the right. You'll find the Petit Trianon. Like, let's go that way. They both thank him. I mean, Miss Morrison, of course, she didn't want to go to the left. So she's like, all right, peace out, guys, and go straight to the right. And then her and Miss Lamont thank the young man, and then he runs away. But just like before, they don't see him leave. They just hear him. So both women keep going, and at this point, conversations kind of stopped between the two of them. So they go over this small bridge, and they come up next to this like little waterfall. As they passed by it, Miss Morrison saw a small house with a woman sitting on the porch, maybe sketching or writing. She had something in her hands. Miss Lamont felt a sudden urge to move her gown out of the way, although she wasn't really sure why. As they walked by the woman, Miss Morrison made eye contact and, walked past her, walked away from her, still had eye contact with her. And she didn't seem like she was an unpleasant woman. She didn't seem like she was angry or anything, but it also wasn't someone she wanted to look at for very long. So she stopped making eye contact, and then they crossed over a terrace and noticed that there was another house along the path. All of a sudden, they saw a man step out onto the terrace of that home. Slamming the door behind him, he found them and directed them towards a different way to the Petit Trianon, which both women thought were weird because it was backtracking where the gardeners had originally told them to go.
Mm-hmm.
They followed along, and whenever they entered into that entrance hall, they were actually made to wait for an arrival of a French wedding party. After all of that, the women went back, got some tea, went along their way without ever really speaking about the trip. About a week later, Miss Morrison decided she's going to write up, her experience in France, including this trip to Petit Trianon. But while she's writing that, she asks Miss Lamont, "Do you think the Petit Trianon is haunted?" And she responds, "Yes." Both women decide to write their experiences down separately and then compare the two. Once they did, they noticed that there were some things that don't add up, aside from the fact that, like, shit was weird.
Right.
Shit was weird.
Shit didn't make sense.
So, at the beginning of the tale, Miss Lamont was pretty confident with the direction that she thought she needed to go. And Miss Morrison was confused why she didn't just ask the woman that was waving the handkerchief. Apparently, Miss Lamont didn't see her, so she just picked the path that looked like it was the correct way and went that way. They did both agree that they saw the gardeners. They agreed on the dress that they were wearing. Miss Lamont didn't really realize what they had in their hand, but Miss Morrison agreed that it was a spade, and so probably leads to believe that they were gardeners.
Okay.
So Miss Lamont was the only one that saw the woman and the little girl that was getting the jug. That was just kind of a note in there that Miss Morris didn't see her. They did agree that the man with the pox face looked a little sinister and gave him the heebie-jeebies and was wearing something that didn't quite go with the season.
Okay.
When Miss Morrison mentioned the woman that was sitting there sketching, Miss Lamont was shocked because she said she never saw that woman, even though she just for some reason was compelled to move her skirt so it wouldn't brush against someone. She couldn't figure out why, though, but apparently there was a woman there at that time. So those are the parts that don't line up in their story. Not that they're saying that they don't line up because, like, oh, we're making shit up. They actually went on to do extensive research. Like, if you guys go get that book, you can read it online. I don't know. I'm sure you could buy a copy of it somewhere. They do go through. Miss Lamont actually goes back at one point and ends up in a forest that she can't find again afterwards. They're not sure what exactly happened there. So part of the research that they did was, of course, the history of Petit Trianon. And they actually heard some rumors that on a day in August, you can see Marie Antoinette and some of her court out there on the grounds because of the French Revolution. And August 10th, 1792 was the insurrection. It's believed that what Miss Morrison saw, the woman sitting there sketching, was Marie Antoinette.
Huh.
And she was there. She was mourning because of everything that was going on. And it was before, her end was coming and everything. So that's the story with that. Again, like, that book has all of the information. They actually go through and they look at different maps because Versailles itself was actually open to the public, like freely open to the public in like 18 something. So there was no reason in 1901 for someone to be like, hey, you can't go this way. You can't go to the left. You need to go over here. Like, having people usher them certain ways.
Yeah.
It was freely open. And whenever they went back several times, like in 1902, in 1904, I think they went back 1910, each time it was free and there were like a whole bunch of people that were there. But the time that they went, it was just them on the path with these other people that they saw along the way. So that's probably one of the more famous time slips. They just ended up in French insurrection.
Yeah, that's really weird.
So,
So while you were telling that, I'm sure you saw my face.
I saw your face a lot. Yeah, what?
I realized that I may have had my own time slip. I don't know if you remember the one time I was talking about seeing this set of 3 graves right outside of one of the cities that I passed her to come down to you.
Mm-mm.
right after the sheriff's office, I remember looking over and being like, oh yeah, the graves. And I saw a set of 3 graves and I cannot find them again.
I was going to say, I don't know of a graveyard.
There's next time you come up, you just look. There's one that's, if you're coming up this way, it's on the left. If you're coming down, it's on your right. It's a pretty big graveyard. It's like where there's like this crossroad. It's a little triangular plot of land. But where I saw these graves is not associated with the graveyard. It was 3 solitary graves. Like I can draw it. And every time I look, it's not there anymore. So I wonder if I had a really small time slip that I saw these graves that may have been there. And now because I can't find them, like, I don't know. It's very weird. That's always on my mind.
Dad, he found that house
Yeah.
on one of those back roads, one of the back roads here in Texas. He found that house and he took a picture of it, and that picture doesn't exist and we can't find the house again.
Right.
So either spooky ghost house. See, that's my thing is I'm like, okay, either this is ghosty shit or it's a time slip.
Right.
Because you can even go as far as like, my only issue with really all of these stories, if it's like a residual kind of haunting, is they interact with them. That's the problem.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the only ones that don't are like on Bold Street, the man interacts with the woman that seems to be from the 90s. Like they interact together. And then the guy that was running, he doesn't really interact with anyone. So it's not like that could be a residual kind of deal. But then you look at the one in Louisiana, he talked to the woman and was like, pull over, let us help you.
Right.
And same with Miss Morrison and Miss Lamont. Like they had full on, not conversations, but like they did converse with these people or spirits or whatever you want to call them. So is it a haunting? Is it a time slip? Like, especially if they say that Marie Antoinette can be seen, one night in August doing this. Like, is it just a residual haunted time slip?
Residual haunted time slip.
I'm just thinking, if a point in time is so, emotionally charged, is it possible that it can haunt that time space?
I don't see why not. I mean, if the stone tape theory can exist, anything can exist. That's
True.
kind of my view on it. Yeah, I've heard of time slips where they've actually seen pterodactyls in the sky, where there's been a time slip of that particular portion of sky will rip to show prehistoric, back when pterosaurs were a thing, and you can see the pterodactyl fly off and then it vanishes.
While you shit your pants.
100% I would be. I mean, I'd be like, that's a freaking pterodactyl. And then I would shit my pants. I'd probably die.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. There was one thing that I saw that I was like, I don't know how fully I believe this. I'm sure you can Google it and you can find the video that I'm talking about. There is a guy that he says that he met his future self. So I don't know if this is a time slip. I don't know if this is just 2 dudes that were like, we can get away with something. But like, he says he came home and he saw a big puddle of water in his kitchen. And he was like, oh, I have a leak. So he decides he's going to get his tools and he's going to get under the sink and he's going to fix the leak. And he gets under there and he keeps crawling and crawling and crawling. And then all of a sudden there's a light and he crawls out and he comes face to face with himself 70 years in the future. And he's like, holy shit, no one's going to believe me. So I still have my cell phone. So he pulls it out, takes a video, and they both show their tattoo that they both have on their right arm. But also at the same time, like, it's not a super unique tattoo. The guy in his 70s, like, the tattoo kind of, like, I would think it would be more faded. I mean, maybe he just, like, super duper skincare, takes care of his shit. Because Taylor, your tattoo's faded real quick. Like, so
don't tat shame me.
I'm not tat shaming. I'm calling you out for not taking care of your shit. That one, I'm like,
I would have to watch the video. But I could very easily see that being done with some very good movie makeup, FX kind of makeup. And, if you can make a tattoo look faded, but if the tattoo doesn't look faded, like a tattoo on a 26-year-old is going to look extremely different compared to a tattoo on a 70-year-old.
Right.
The tattoo on the 70-year-old is going to appear blue in color. The edges are going to be fuzzy, while on the 26-year-old, it's going to be much sharper, more of the black colors.
And the way that it looks, like you could almost think like these two dudes were like, wow, we look alike. Like you look like me when I was 20. And he was like, dude, so that's what I would look like when I'm 70. And he was like, man, if only we had the same tattoo, we'd be twins. And so the dude from the 20s was like, hell yeah, I'm going to go get the same tattoo. And then gets it. And then they make this video. Like, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there. So I don't know. Maybe you do have a weird portal underneath your kitchen sink, which is a really weird spot.
Sink portal.
But
it really is.
I would think if the whole Earth is part of a spinning space-time vortex, anywhere it could be, maybe.
That's legit.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, that was super trippy, and now I feel like I need drugs or something.
Like, maybe we should put a disclaimer at the beginning of the episode of like, if you're not high, you should get high.
Like, you should get high, because if you don't, your brain would melt.
Find something. Hey, who knows? Maybe if you do listen while you're high, you'll actually find some answers for us, because you'll be like, whoa, man, like, what? This is crazy. Or you'll have like your own like realization that you yourself have been through a time slip. Maybe.
That's legit.
I don't know.
If you do discover that you've been through a time slip, tell us.
Or did they already tell us?
Oh, they haven't already told us.
You don't know that, Taylor. The future is now, and the past is the future.
My brain doesn't like that. My brain likes logic. It likes sequential things.
So it brings me to think about hauntings. Is it a haunting, or are we simply in their time period and they think that we're interrupting them? Do they say hello and we say hello because they're like, someone's in my house? Like, hello? And then we go, who is this? And they're like, it's fucking Jim, you dick. Who are you? Like, what?
It's fucking Jim.
Fucking Jim. So what if hauntings aren't necessarily spirits, but it's really just the space-time vortex having its little heyday and mixing realities?
Could very well be. That is an entire theory, that it's all different dimensions, and what we experience as hauntings, or particularly shadow people and that kind of thing, is actually interdimensional beings coming through from different space-time.
Yeah.
It is entirely possible.
So, crazy shit.
That is crazy shit. I need a cupcake. I need something.
I gotta eat these emotions that I can't decide what emotions they are, but I'm gonna eat them. Yeah.
My emotions.
Oh my God. So,
that was good. I like that.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I think next time you're going to have something that's not as trip-tastic, right?
Yeah. No, we are doing paranormal equipment.
Get ready for more science shit.
More science, but this is less blow your mind science and more just regular science. So you won't need to feel like you needed some acid before this. Yeah.
Yep.
So it'll be fun. And then after that, we should, after that, have an evidence review for the last time that we were at the lake, because I'm still working through all that. It's surprising how long it takes to get through video footage.
Damn right.
So,
which I actually had a theory about that too. What if those train whistles are in a time slip?
It could very well be. Because we didn't freaking get them the second time. Spoiler alert, you guys. We got the train whistles that first time. We did not get them the second time, and my mind is not okay with it. So I don't know.
We're in for the time slip. Let's do the time. Okay, I won't sing anymore, but
we're gonna get copyrighted.
Oh my God.
And shut it down.
Shut it down. Okay.
But yeah, we'll have that eventually, hopefully in the next week or so, because Whitney will be going to LaSalle
Yep.
and having a time there, and she'll be doing some ghost hunting. So I actually dropped off all of my equipment. So thank you very much for listening. And if you have your own spooky time slip stories, tell us.
Or have you already told us at TheGhostSistersTX@gmail.com?
Oh! Or at the Ghost Sisters TX for Instagram and Pinterest, or the Ghost Sisters at Facebook and Twitter.
Hell yeah.
And we also have a Reddit. I did create a Reddit. We have a subreddit that is the Ghost Sisters.
Guys, she told me that she was like, we have a Reddit. And I was like, why the fuck do we have a Reddit? And then I went out there and it says, ooh, sorry, nothing's been posted yet. Why the fuck do we have a Reddit, Taylor?
Because I just was like, I might as well grab this because we got to compete with the Ghost Sisters band to get our name. So I was like, this is ours.
I don't think the band is that concerned with Reddit.
They might be. You don't know.
So far, it's not looking like it because no one's posted and been like, hey, you bitches suck. Like, what? Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That being said, please don't post, hey, you bitches suck.
Unless it's like suck in like the like cool way, which I don't really know how that's, like what are the kids saying these days?
Bet. Straight up, no cap.
What the fuck?
I need to ask like kids in my class, what are the children saying nowadays?
You guys got to give me some hip, cool words.
That shit slaps. Okay, for realsies, we're gonna let you go because I'm sure you're like, oh my god. So thank you for listening.
Yes.
And we appreciate it.
And we will spook you later, bitches.
Spook you later, bitches. Okay, bye.
Bye.